When presence turns to absence, the silence becomes louder than any voice. The gestures once ignored now feel priceless. Surrounded by many, the emptiness lingers. No one replaces the calm that was once taken for granted. By the time realization strikes, regret has already taken its place. Absence has a way of opening eyes in a way presence never could. When someone is always available, always present, and always giving, it becomes easy to take that consistency as ordinary. Day after day, the effort, the care, and the attention can blend into the background, unnoticed and unappreciated. But the moment that presence fades away, the silence begins to speak in ways that words never manage to. The quiet moments become heavy. The comfort that was once assumed now feels like a void that nothing else can fill. What was once seen as ordinary suddenly begins to look extraordinary. The good morning messages that felt routine are now missed when the phone no longer lights up. The calls that seemed unnecessary are now longed for when the line stays silent. Even the smallest gestures, like asking about the day or remembering little details, turn into memories that play over and over again. It is only in absence that their true weight is recognized. The value was always there, but familiarity blinded it. Absence strips away the illusion of endlessness. People often believe they can take their time, that someone will always be there no matter how carelessly they are treated. But when that person pulls back, when the energy is no longer being poured in, the reality sets in. The effort was not guaranteed, it was a choice. And once that choice is withdrawn, its rarity becomes undeniable. Suddenly, the heart begins to ache for the very things it once dismissed. Absence is powerful because it forces reflection. It makes one replay the moments where gratitude should have been expressed but wasn't. It highlights how much ease and stability were brought into life without demand for recognition. The laughter, the presence, the consistency, once brushed aside as unimportant, are revealed as the very foundation that made everything feel secure. Without it, the ground feels shaky, the air feels colder, and the heart feels emptier. This is why absence awakens value, because when someone is gone, no matter how simple their gestures once seemed, they leave behind echoes. Echoes that whisper in quiet moments, reminding of what was lost, what was ignored, and what can never be replaced in quite the same way. Absence turns memories into lessons, and lessons into regrets. It transforms what was once taken for granted into something deeply missed, painfully remembered, and silently longed for. It is then that the truth becomes clear. Value is often realized too late, not in the presence, but in the absence that follows. It is often the little things that carry the deepest meaning, yet they are the first to be overlooked. Efforts that may seem small on the surface are, in truth, the very heartbeat of connection. The daily check-ins, the way someone makes sure you are safe, the way they notice your moods even when you do not speak, all of these are acts of care that rarely demand attention. Because they come consistently, they can start to feel invisible. The routine of someone's loyalty, patience, and attentiveness is so subtle that it blends into the background, and instead of being cherished, it is dismissed as nothing extraordinary. But unnoticed efforts are the quiet proof of love and commitment. They are not grand gestures meant to impress a crowd, but steady acts that whisper, "You matter." It is the silent protection, the unspoken support, the countless times someone chose to put your needs above their own. These efforts are easy to ignore in the moment because they come without announcement. They arrive without a demand for applause, yet once they are gone, their absence becomes deafening. When the calls stop, when the thoughtful reminders no longer come, when the invisible shield of care is removed, the emptiness makes itself known. That is when memories surface. Memories of how someone never let you walk through life feeling alone, how they carried burdens quietly just so you could feel lighter. Suddenly, the weight of what was given freely and silently begins to press heavily on the heart. The realization arrives too late that the efforts were never small. They were monumental. They were signs of a presence so rare that it cannot be duplicated. The truth is, unnoticed efforts are often the glue that holds relationships together. They may not sparkle or shine, but they provide stability. Without them, cracks begin to show. The comfort once provided by consistency is replaced with restlessness. The ease once felt in their presence is replaced with longing. And in those moments of reflection, the question arises, why did I not see it before? Why did I not acknowledge the depth of what was being given to me every single day? That is the pain of unnoticed efforts. They are rarely recognized while they are happening because the human mind becomes accustomed to what feels guaranteed. Yet nothing is guaranteed. Every gesture, every moment of patience, every sacrifice is a conscious choice. To disregard it is to risk losing it. And once it is lost, no amount of regret can bring back the same energy, the same intention, the same silent devotion. What once felt ordinary now feels extraordinary. What once seemed small now feels immeasurable. And the haunting truth settles in. Those unnoticed efforts were love in its purest form, and once ignored, they become the very thing that is missed the most. Energy never lies. It tells a story long before words ever do. When someone gives you their attention, their care, and their presence, you can feel it in the smallest interactions. Their energy is constantly reaching toward you, wrapping you in a comfort that feels endless. But when that energy shifts, when the focus that was once on you starts to turn inward or outward, the change is impossible to ignore. What was once warm suddenly feels cold. What was once steady now feels distant. The absence is not just in actions, it is in the invisible current that once made you feel secure. This shift rarely happens overnight. It builds quietly, often after countless moments of being unappreciated or dismissed. At first, you may not notice it. The messages still come, but they no longer carry the same depth. The conversations still happen, but they lack the spark they once had. The laughter feels shorter, the patience thinner, the presence weaker. Slowly, the energy that used to pour into you starts to be pulled back. And when that flow stops, the void it leaves behind cannot be ignored. That shift is powerful because it reveals what was once taken for granted. You start to feel the absence in moments you never expected. You begin to notice that the attention you always assumed would be there has now become scarce. The little things, like someone always being the first to check on you, suddenly disappear, and their silence speaks louder than any words could. It is in this silence that realization strikes. You were the recipient of a constant stream of energy that you did not value when it was overflowing. When energy shifts, so does perspective. You begin to see what no one else can give you in quite the same way. You may find others around, you may even be surrounded by company, but it does not compare to the authenticity of the connection you once had. You feel the difference between someone giving out of obligation and someone giving out of genuine care. The comparison is painful because it highlights how unique the lost energy truly was. The human heart is wired to notice absence more deeply than presence. We rarely appreciate the constant glow until it dims. We rarely value the steady hand until it lets go. And when that energy is no longer directed toward you, it forces you to face the reality that someone's effort is never guaranteed. It was a privilege, not a right. It was a choice, not a duty. And once that choice is taken away, longing replaces comfort, regret replaces confidence, and emptiness replaces security. The shift of energy is the turning point. It is when you finally understand what was once flowing freely toward you and how much of it you consumed without gratitude. It is the awakening that comes too late, the moment when presence becomes memory, and the only thing left to feel is the echo of what once was. Comparison is inevitable when something rare is lost. When the consistency and devotion that once surrounded you suddenly disappear, the heart instinctively begins to measure every new experience against what it used to have. No matter how much pride tries to mask it, there comes a quiet moment of realization. No one else offers the same level of patience. No one listens with the same depth. No one brings the same stability. That's when the comparison trap begins to set in, not because you are searching for it, but because the absence forces you to see what cannot be duplicated. The trap lies in expecting others to match the effort that was once dismissed. You meet someone new, yet their attention feels shallow compared to the one who used to remember every detail about you. You receive compliments, but they lack the sincerity of the words that once carried weight. You may even be surrounded by people, but their presence feels temporary, transactional, or conditional, unlike the steady presence that once asked for nothing in return. The more you search for that same energy in others, the more you realize it was never ordinary. It was exceptional. This comparison becomes a haunting cycle. Every time someone falls short, the mind pulls back old memories of what was once effortless. You replay moments where care was shown without being asked, where sacrifices were made without complaint, and where your happiness was prioritized as if it were their own. At the time, those moments may have felt common, almost expected. Now they shine in memory as proof of something incredibly rare. And no matter how hard you try to silence it, the comparison is constant because the truth is undeniable. What you lost was never basic, it was extraordinary. The pain of the comparison trap is not just in recognizing the difference, but in realizing that the loss was preventable. It forces reflection on the choices that led to this absence. You begin to see how easily genuine care was overlooked, how quickly loyalty was taken for granted, and how casually love was dismissed. Every new interaction feels like a mirror reflecting back what you once had and failed to value. That reflection does not flatter, it exposes. Over time, the comparisons grow heavier because the more you experience others, the clearer the uniqueness of what you lost becomes. It is not just about words, actions, or gestures. It is about energy, presence, and intention. These are things that cannot be forced, cannot be faked, and cannot be replaced by anyone else. And the harsh reality is that once you lose someone who gave those things freely, every other interaction feels like a shadow. The comparison trap is the mind's way of reminding you of the depth you once dismissed. It is a lesson dressed as longing, a mirror that reflects regret, and a cycle that whispers a truth you cannot escape. When you take something rare for granted, you set yourself up to spend the rest of your life searching for it in places it no longer exists. There is a certain kind of loneliness that cuts deeper than being physically alone. It is the loneliness that follows you even when you are surrounded by people. You can laugh, you can talk, you can be in the middle of a crowd, yet something feels missing. That emptiness creeps in when the presence you once dismissed is no longer by your side. It is not about the absence of company. It is about the absence of connection. The truth is, a room full of voices cannot replace the comfort of the one voice that made you feel at home. This kind of loneliness arrives silently. At first, you try to distract yourself with new faces, new conversations, and new interactions. But no matter how much noise fills the air, it never drowns out the quiet ache in your heart. You find yourself scanning the room, subconsciously searching for what you know isn't there. You realize that the crowd only highlights the emptiness within. Surrounded by many, you feel unseen. Engaged in conversations, you feel unheard. And in those moments, it becomes painfully clear. The presence you once overlooked gave you a sense of belonging that no number of people can replicate. The reason loneliness in crowds feels so heavy is because it exposes what you lost. It forces you to see that connection is not about how many people are around you, but about who truly understands you. The laughter of strangers cannot replace the comfort of someone who knew your silence. The attention of many cannot replace the care of someone who never let you feel invisible. The more you try to fill the emptiness with surface-level company, the more hollow it feels, because deep down, you know the difference between being entertained and being valued. This realization does not come immediately. At first, you might convince yourself that the crowd is enough, that distraction is healing, but the heart is stubborn. It does not forget the safety it once knew. The more you deny it, the more it reminds you. Every shallow connection becomes a mirror reflecting what you had and failed to appreciate. The more you compare, the deeper the loneliness grows, because the truth is undeniable. Nothing feels the same without the presence you took for granted. In time, you begin to understand that loneliness is not cured by proximity, but by depth. It is not about how many people want your attention, but about who genuinely cared when no one else did. You realize that the one who is gone carried an energy that made even the quietest moments feel full, an energy that cannot be duplicated in any crowd. And as this truth settles in, the loneliness sharpens. Not because you are truly alone, but because you now understand what it feels like to be surrounded by many, yet miss the one presence that made you feel complete. Stability is often invisible while it is present, yet its absence shakes everything to the core. When someone offers emotional steadiness, patience, and consistency, it creates a foundation you begin to walk on without fear. You stop questioning whether they will show up because they always do. You stop doubting whether you are cared for because their actions quietly prove it day after day. This stability becomes so natural that you start believing it will always be there. And that is where the mistake lies, confusing reliability with permanence. The realization of stability often comes only after it is lost. Suddenly, the world feels uncertain. Where there was once reassurance, now there is silence. Where there was once calm, now there is restlessness. The heart that was held so gently now has to navigate on its own, and in that solitude, you begin to notice how much weight was carried for you. You replay moments where their patience shielded you from chaos, where their consistency brought peace you did not even recognize at the time. That is when the truth stares back at you. What you called ordinary was, in fact, extraordinary. Stability is not loud. It does not demand recognition. It is the kind of love that works quietly in the background, making life easier without needing applause. It is checking in when no one else thinks to. It is choosing understanding over conflict. It is providing comfort when the rest of the world feels heavy. And because it does not come with drama or grand gestures, it is often the first thing people take for granted. But when it disappears, its absence is devastating. The weight of instability makes you see what you once ignored. Now, small problems feel overwhelming because the person who always grounded you is gone. The smallest disagreements feel heavier because you no longer have their calm perspective balancing your emotions. Even moments of joy feel incomplete because the stability that once made happiness secure has been replaced with uncertainty. Life without that presence feels like walking on uneven ground, every step uncertain, every moment shaky. This realization carries regret. You begin to understand that stability is not common. Most people do not offer consistency. They offer temporary attention, conditional care, and fleeting presence. To have had someone who gave their energy steadily was rare, yet you treated it as if it were guaranteed. That recognition cuts deep because it forces you to face your own blindness. The very thing that kept your heart safe was the thing you overlooked the most. When the realization hits, it comes with clarity. You were not just missing a person, you were missing the peace they created. You were not just missing their presence, you were missing the security that came with it. And in that painful truth, you finally understand that stability was never boring, never ordinary, never replaceable. It was the anchor, the foundation, the rarest form of love, and losing it is what teaches its true worth. Gratitude is powerful when it arrives on time, but when it comes late, it carries the sting of regret. It is easy to overlook what is given consistently, to assume that loyalty, patience, and effort are guaranteed. When someone is always there, always showing up, and always choosing you, their presence becomes background noise instead of the gift it truly is. Instead of acknowledging the value of their actions in the moment, you convince yourself there will always be more time to say thank you, more opportunities to appreciate them. But life has a way of teaching that delayed gratitude is often gratitude that never reaches its destination. The painful truth is that people rarely recognize what they have while it is in front of them. The small gestures, the kind words, the sacrifices, the support offered without being asked, are brushed aside as if they are nothing special. You may even grow impatient, thinking it is not enough, wishing for something bigger, louder, or more dramatic. But when that steady stream of effort is withdrawn, when the presence that once felt guaranteed is no longer available, you suddenly begin to see what you missed. Every act of kindness you overlooked replays in your mind, now shining with a clarity that feels unbearable. This is where delayed gratitude hurts the most. You remember moments where a simple acknowledgement could have changed everything. A thank you, a small recognition, a gesture of appreciation could have reminded them their efforts were seen. But those words were never spoken. Those moments were never honored. And now the opportunity has passed. Gratitude that comes after absence is heavy. It is no longer a gift. It is a confession of regret. Delayed gratitude also teaches the harsh lesson that timing matters. Gratitude offered in memory does not heal wounds. It does not replace the effort that has already stopped. It does not undo the feeling of being taken for granted. Instead, it lingers in the heart as a reminder that silence cost you something priceless. You begin to understand that appreciation is not about grand gestures, but about presence, awareness, and acknowledgement in the moment. And once the chance to show it is gone, you are left only with the haunting thought of what could have been. The irony is that gratitude delayed often becomes gratitude amplified. You feel it more deeply when the person is gone. You appreciate them more intensely when they are no longer accessible. But that intensity is useless when it cannot reach the one it belongs to. It becomes a burden carried within, a constant reminder that what you once dismissed was in fact rare, and that you failed to honor it when it mattered most. That is the cruelty of delayed gratitude. It is the right feeling arriving at the wrong time. By the time the heart wakes up to appreciate the stability, the effort, and the love it once received, the moment has already slipped away, leaving nothing but longing and a truth that cannot be escaped. Some lessons can only be learned too late. Regret does not arrive all at once. It creeps in quietly, echoing through the empty spaces left behind. At first, you may distract yourself, convincing your heart that nothing has changed, that you are fine without what you once had. But then, in the stillness of a quiet night or in the middle of an ordinary moment, it surfaces. A memory, a gesture, a piece of laughter that once seemed insignificant suddenly plays in your mind with piercing clarity. And in that moment, regret makes its presence known, not as a fleeting thought, but as a lingering echo that refuses to fade. This echo grows louder with time because it is fed by everything that could have been different. You think of the words you never said, the gratitude you never showed, the patience you never offered. You remember moments where you could have softened your tone, moments where you could have expressed appreciation, moments where you could have simply acknowledged the effort being given to you. Instead, you let them pass. And now those small choices weigh heavier than you ever imagined. Regret turns them into a chain of what ifs that follow you wherever you go. What makes the echo of regret so powerful is that it carries no solution. Unlike mistakes that can be corrected, this kind of regret is tied to what is already lost. You cannot go back and change the way you overlooked their presence. You cannot rewrite the past to show the appreciation you withheld. The silence is permanent, and it forces you to live with the knowledge that the chance to make it right has expired. That realization stings in a way that no external consequence ever could. The echo also shows up in comparisons. You meet new people, you experience new connections, but none of them carry the same depth. None of them bring the same steadiness. None of them reflect the same energy. And each time you notice the difference, the echo returns, reminding you that you once had what you now desperately search for. It whispers that you traded something rare for temporary distractions, and that awareness becomes a shadow that never leaves. Over time, regret begins to shape how you see yourself. It forces you to acknowledge not only what you lost, but also how your own blindness caused it. You realize that you were not a victim of chance. You were given something rare and you failed to value it. That truth is heavy because it cannot be undone. Regret becomes the teacher you never asked for, the companion you cannot escape, the voice that returns every time silence falls. The echo of regret is not just about missing someone. It is about missing the version of yourself that could have cherished them. It is about wishing you had been wiser, softer, more aware. And as the echo continues to replay, it carves a permanent lesson into your soul. Once something rare is lost, it does not return. And what remains is not the presence of what was, but the haunting absence of what could have been. In the end, the story is always the same. Value is realized in absence, not in presence. The unnoticed efforts, the steady energy, the calm stability, all seem ordinary until they are no longer there. Then every silence becomes heavy, every memory becomes sharp, and every comparison becomes painful. Gratitude arrives too late, regret echoes too loud, and the truth stands clear. Nothing was ever guaranteed. What was given was a choice, and once that choice is withdrawn, it rarely returns. The greatest lesson is simple yet bitter, that what is taken for granted does not stay forever. And by the time you recognize its worth, it often belongs to the past, leaving only the ache of what will never be again.